Imagine this. You're standing on a vast, open plain. A cool wind whispers through patches of spruce trees, carrying the scent of pine and damp earth. It's not today, not yesterday, but 13,000 years ago. This is North America during the late Ice Age. A world both familiar and alien. The great ice sheets that once covered the continent are in retreat, their meltwater carving winding rivers through the landscape. Herds of giant mammals, mammoths, mastodons, and bison with impossibly long horns roam this sprawling wilderness, and moving silently through this world are its first human explorers. The Clovis people. Woe were te. They weren't just survivors, they were pioneers, masters of this new frontier. For a long time, we thought they were the very first people to set foot in the Americas, a trailblazing culture that spread with incredible speed across 2 continents. They arrived in the land untouched by human hands, a world of immense opportunity and equally immense danger. We call them the Clovis people because of a discovery made in the 1930s near Clovis, New Mexico. There, archaeologists found exquisitely crafted spear points, unlike anything seen before, nestled among the bones of an extinct mammoth. These weren't just any tools. They were a signature, a calling card left behind by a sophisticated and highly skilled society. These Clovis points are a marvel of ancient technology, fluted at the base. They were designed to be attached to a spear shaft, creating a deadly and effective hunting weapon. Making one required a deep understanding of stone, how to fracture it, how to shape it with precision and patience. The people who made them were not primitive. They were geologists, engineers, and artists, all rolled into one. They knew which stones were best cured. Flint. Obsidian often traveled hundreds of miles to source the highest quality materials. This tells us they weren't just wandering aimlessly. They had a mental map of their world, an intimate knowledge of its resources. Hunting was the cornerstone of their existence. A successful mammoth hunt was a monumental undertaking, requiring teamwork, courage, and a brilliant strategy. Imagine a group of hunters, cloaked in animal hides, tracking a 10-ton beast through the grasslands. They wouldn't have charged in head-on. Instead, they would have used the landscape to their advantage, perhaps driving the animal into a bog or a narrow ravine where it couldn't easily maneuver. Then, with coordinated precision, they would have moved in with their spears, aiming for vital spots. A single kill could feed a group for weeks, providing not just meat, but also hides for shelter and clothing, bones for tools and structures, and sinew for thread. Every part of the animal was used. Nothing was wasted. But the Clovis world wasn't just about the big game. They were adaptable, opportunistic foragers. They hunted smaller animals, like deer, turtles, and birds. They fished in the rivers and gathered edible plants, roots, and berries. Their diet was as varied as the landscape itself. This flexibility was key to their success. As the climate continued to warm and the environment changed, the megafauna began to disappear. The Clovis people had to adapt or vanish along with them. This transition marks one of the most mysterious chapters in their story. Their social lives were likely complex and rich. They would have lived in small, mobile family groups, following the seasonal migration of animals and the ripening of plants. At night, they would gather around a crackling fire, sharing stories, planning the next day's hunt, and passing down their knowledge to the next generation. This oral tradition was their library, their school, and their connection to their ancestors. They might have had spiritual beliefs tied to the animals they hunted and the powerful forces of nature they witnessed every day: the storms, the changing seasons, the starry night sky. While we don't have written records, we find hints of their symbolic world in rare carvings, on bone or stone, mysterious etchings that give us a glimpse into their minds. One of the most fascinating aspects of the Clovis culture is how quickly it spread. Clovis-style points have been found from Canada all the way down to Mexico, and even into South America. For about 500 years, this technology dominated the archaeological record. It was a cultural phenomenon. Did the people themselves spread that fast? Or did the idea that technology of the Clovis point travel from group to group like a viral trend? This is a question that archaeologists still debate fiercely. It's a puzzle that speaks to the dynamism and interconnectedness of these ancient societies. But then, almost as suddenly as it appeared, The Clovis culture vanished from the archaeological record around 12,800 years ago. The distinctive fluted point stopped being made, replaced by a variety of new regional styles. What happened? This is another great mystery. One major theory points to a dramatic climate event known as the Younger Dryas, a sudden and intense cold snap that plunged the northern hemisphere back into near glacial conditions. This would have drastically altered the environment, stressed food resources, and may have contributed to the final extinction of the megafauna. The world the Clovis people had mastered was changing faster than ever, and they had to change with it. It wasn't a single disappearance, but more of a transformation. The descendants of the Clovis people didn't die out. They adapted. They fragmented into new groups, developed new technologies, and new ways of life tailored to their local environments. They became the ancestors of the incredible diversity of Native American cultures that would flourish across the continents for millennia. The Clovis era wasn't the beginning and end of the story of people in the Americas. It was a spectacular and foundational chapter, and the plot thickened even more in recent decades. For a long time, the Clovis first model was the accepted truth, but new archaeological sites have emerged, from Buttermilk Creek in Texas to Monte Verde in Chile, with evidence of human occupation that predates Clovis by 1,000 years, or even more. This has completely revolutionized our understanding of the peopling of the Americas. The Clovis people were not the first, but they were perhaps the first widespread, continentally successful culture we can clearly identify. The story is now more complex, more nuanced, and even more fascinating. Who were these pre-Clovis people? How did they get here? The search for answers continues. So, when you see a Clovis point in a museum, don't just see a piece of sharpened rock. See a masterpiece of engineering. See the key to survival in a harsh and beautiful world. See the symbol of a people who were intelligent, resilient, and resourceful. They were the masters of the Ice Age, the first great innovators of a continent. Their legacy isn't just in the stones they left behind, but in the human spirit of exploration and adaptation that they represent, a spirit that continues to drive us today. They remind us that our own story, the story of humanity, is written not just in books, but in the very land beneath our feet. Thanks so much for joining me on this journey back in time. If you found this fascinating, hit that like button and subscribe for more deep dives into our shared past. See you next time. The air is cool, still holding the last remnants of night's chill. A soft, pearly light filters through the pine canopy, painting the world in shades of gray and silver. This is morning in a Clovis camp, 13,000 years ago. We're stepping back in time, walking softly on a carpet of pine needles and damp earth. The camp is just beginning to stir. The structures around us are not permanent homes, but seasonal shelters, designed for a life on the move. They are domed or conical frames, likely made from mammoth bones or sturdy saplings, draped in heavy animal hides. You can see the dark, rich texture of the bison or mastodon skins, stitched together with sinew. They're weathered and tough, proof against wind and rain. A faint, earthy smell hangs in the air, a mix of leather, wood smoke, and damp soil. It's the scent of survival, of home. Look closer at the entrance of one shelter. The hide flap is pushed aside, and you can almost feel the warmth radiating from within. Inside, a small family is sleeping on beds of soft fir boughs and furs. The air is thick with the scent of sleeping bodies and the lingering aroma of last night's meal. As we move through the quiet spaces between the shelters, we come to the heart of the community, the central fire rings. These aren't just one large bonfire, but several smaller, contained hearths. Each one is a circle of carefully placed river stones, blackened by countless fires. The ashes are still warm, glowing with a soft, orange pulse in the center. Someone has already been here, gently coaxing the embers back to life. A thin tendril of pale gray smoke curls upward, carrying the sharp, clean scent of burning pine. This is where stories were told, where food was shared, where the day's successes and failures were recounted under the stars. Now, listen. The silence is broken by a rhythmic, sharp sound. Asterisk. Tink. Tink. Crack! Asterisk. Over there, just on the edge of the main clearing. A man is already at work. He sits on a log, hunched over a large piece of stone. This is a flint knapping station. You can see the evidence of his craft scattered at his feet. A carpet of sharp, glistening flakes of chert and flint. Some are as small as a fingernail, others the size of your palm. He holds a core of high-quality stone in one hand, and a hammerstone, probably a smooth, dense river cobble, in the other. With practiced, precise strikes, he detaches a large flake. He then switches tools, picking up a piece of antler. This is for the finer, more delicate work. He presses the tip against the edge of the flake, applying careful pressure. Another sharp crack, and a long, thin sliver of stone peels away. He's shaping a point, a beautiful, fluted Clovis point, the kind that will be hafted onto a spear shaft and used to hunt the great beasts of this Ice Age world. The concentration on his face is absolute. This isn't just a craft, it's an essential skill, the key to feeding his family. The ground here is a mosaic of discarded attempts and perfect successes, a library of stone tool technology written on the earth. As the sun climbs higher, casting longer shadows, more people begin to emerge. A woman carries a hide bag towards the nearby stream, its surface glittering in the morning light. Children, wrapped in rabbit furs, tumble out of a shelter, their quiet laughter muffled. Life is gentle here, but purposeful. Every action has a reason. Let's wander over to a slightly more secluded spot, perhaps under the shade of a large, ancient oak tree. The ground here is different. It's softer, and if you look closely, you can see tiny, iridescent fragments mixed in with the dirt. This is where the finer, more personal work happens. A woman sits on a woven mat, a collection of objects spread before her. She's not working with stone or hide, but with something more delicate. Shell. She might have a basket full of freshwater mussel shells, gathered from the river a day's walk away. Or perhaps she has marine shells, acquired through a long chain of trade, passed from hand to hand across hundreds of miles. These shells are precious. She holds one up to the light, a pearly, rainbow-hued disc. Using a sharp stone awl, she begins to patiently drill a tiny hole near the edge. It's slow, painstaking work. One slip, and the fragile shell could shatter. Around her are finished pieces, small, circular beads, polished until they gleam. Some are strung on a leather cord to be worn as a necklace or a bracelet. Others might be sewn onto a piece of clothing, a small splash of beauty and status. This isn't about pure survival. This is about identity, about art. This is where a person expresses their connection to the wider world, their place within the group. The quiet scraping and drilling is a different kind of sound from the flint knapper's sharp percussion. It's a sound of patience, of creativity. It's the quiet hum of culture being born. The camp is now fully awake. The smell of roasting meat begins to join the wood smoke as chunks of bison or deer are cooked over the rekindled fires. People gather talking in low tones, planning the day's hunt or the gathering of roots and berries. A group of men checks their spears, testing the bindings that hold the stone points to the wooden shafts. Their movements are economical, born of long practice. They know their lives depend on the integrity of these tools. We can see the entire ecosystem of the camp laid out before us. The butchering area, slightly downstream and away from the main camp, where animals are processed. The hide working area, where skins are scraped clean, stretched, and tanned using brains and smoke, filling the air with a pungent, chemical smell. Each activity has its designated space, a mental map understood by everyone. It's a system designed for efficiency and hygiene, developed over generations. This isn't just a random collection of people. It's a tightly knit community, a band of perhaps 20 to 50 individuals, bound by kinship and mutual dependence. They move with the seasons, following the migratory herds that are their lifeblood. This camp, nestled in a sheltered valley, with access to water, wood, and stone, might be their home for a few weeks or a few months, until the animals move on and they must follow. As we look back one last time, the scene is one of peaceful, ordered industry. The sounds, the smells, the textures, the rough hide of the shelters, the sharp edges of the flint, the smooth coolness of a shell bead, the warmth of the firewall, combine to create a vivid picture of life. It's a world both starkly challenging and deeply beautiful. These were not primitive savages, but intelligent, adaptable, and creative people, living in deep harmony with their environment. They built homes, they created art, they loved their families, and they laid the foundations for all the human history that would follow on this continent. Walking through their camp, even just in our imagination, is a profound connection to our deepest human past. Thank you for joining me on this journey back in time. If you've found this glimpse into the Clovis world as fascinating as I do, please like, share, and subscribe for more deep dives into our ancient history. See you next time. Have you ever wondered how a delicate seashell, born in the ocean's embrace, could end up hundreds, or even thousands, of miles inland? It seems impossible, right? But the story of how these shimmering treasures traveled across continents is a fascinating tale of human connection, trade, and exploration. Let's dive into the long journey of shells. For ancient people living far from the coast, the ocean was a place of myth and mystery. Seashells weren't just pretty objects. They were exotic, rare, and held a certain magic. They were gifts from a world they might never see. Finding one in an archaeological site deep in the heart of a continent is like discovering a message in a bottle from the distant past. So, how did they get there? The answer lies in the incredible ingenuity and social networks of our ancestors. One of the primary ways was through vast and complex trade networks. Imagine ancient highways, not paved with asphalt, but forged by footsteps, canoes, and shared stories. Coastal communities, who had direct access to the bounty of the sea, would gather specific types of shells. These weren't just any shells picked up from the beach. Often, they were particular species, like the lustrous abalone from the Pacific coast or the iconic conch shells from the Gulf of Mexico, chosen for their beauty, durability, and symbolic power. These coastal groups would then trade the shells with their neighbors further inland. A handful of shells might be exchanged for obsidian, for tool-making, haiquala, stone, or perhaps animal hides. And so, the journey began. The shells would be passed from one group to another, moving incrementally away from the coast. Each transaction added another chapter to the shell story, another link in a chain of human interaction that could stretch across entire landscapes. This down-the-line trade meant that a shell found in, say, the American Midwest might have passed through dozens of hands, its value increasing with every mile it traveled from its saltwater home. Another major route for these ocean gems was along migration paths and seasonal rounds. People didn't just stay in one place. Nomadic and semi-nomadic groups moved with the seasons, following herds of animals or cycles of plant growth. A group that spent summers near the coast might travel inland for the winter, bringing shells with them as personal adornments, sacred objects, or valuable items for trade with the people they encountered on their journey. Over generations, these repeated movements could distribute coastal materials over a surprisingly wide area. Think of it as a slow, steady pulse, carrying bits of the ocean inland with every beat. And we can't forget the superhighways of the ancient world. Rivers. Rivers were the lifeblood of inland societies, providing water, food, and, crucially, a means of transportation. A canoe could travel far more quickly and carry much more weight than a person on foot. Coastal groups could paddle upriver, trading their marine goods, including shells, with communities living along the river banks. These riverine communities, in turn, could carry the shells further upstream or overland to other river systems. Major river networks like the Mississippi, the Amazon, or the Nile acted as massive arteries, pumping goods, ideas, and people from the coasts deep into the continental interior. Shells would travel up these water roads, branching off into smaller tributaries, reaching places that seemed incredibly remote from the sea. What were these shells used for? Their purpose was as varied as the people who treasured them. They were often crafted into stunning jewelry, necklaces, bracelets, earrings, and intricate pens. They were sewn onto clothing, creating beautiful and sometimes noisy decorations that shimmered with movement. A garment adorned with hundreds of tiny shells would have been an incredible status symbol, a visible sign of wealth, power, and long-distance connections. Imagine the sound it would make, a soft, rhythmic clatter, like a whisper of the distant waves. Beyond adornment, shells held deep, spiritual and ceremonial significance. Their connection to water, the source of all life, made them powerful symbols. In many cultures, they were used in rituals, buried with the dead to accompany them to the afterlife, or used by shamans and healers as tools to connect with the spirit world. The spiral shape of a conch shell, for example, was often seen as a symbol of creation, rebirth, and the cyclical nature of life. Its sound, when used as a trumpet, could be heard for miles, calling people to ceremonies or signaling important events. These weren't just objects. They were sacred items imbued with meaning and power. Archaeologists can trace these ancient paths by meticulously mapping where different types of shells are found. By identifying the species, they can pinpoint its coastal origin. For example, finding an olive shell native to the Gulf of Mexico in a site in Ohio tells us a story about a trade route that stretched for over 1,000 miles. We see evidence of these networks all over the world. In Europe, shells from the Atlantic and the Mediterranean have been found in prehistoric sites deep within the continent. In Australia, Bela shells were traded hundreds of kilometers from the northern coast into the arid central desert. Each shell is a tiny piece of a massive puzzle, a physical marker of a connection between two distant places. It represents a journey, a handshake, a shared understanding between different cultures. It shows us that the world has always been interconnected, long before the internet or global shipping. The desire for beauty, for the exotic, for objects that carry a story, is a deeply human trait. So, the next time you see a seashell, especially if you're far from the ocean, take a moment to appreciate its incredible journey. It's more than just a beautiful object. It's a testament to the ancient, sprawling networks that connected humanity. It's a shimmering gift, passed from hand to hand, from coast to heartland, carrying with it a whisper of the faraway sea. This long journey reminds us that we are all part of a much larger story of movement, trade, and shared human experience. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this journey into the past, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more stories hidden in plain sight. See you next time. Have you ever walked along a beach and picked up a shell, drawn to its unique shape or color? For ancient artisans, this selection process was far from random. It was a thoughtful, almost sacred act, a dialogue between the artist and the natural world. Today, let's dive into the fascinating world of how these ancient creators chose their shells, looking at the colors, shapes, and deep symbolic meanings they held. When we think of shell mosaics, we often picture a dazzling array of materials, but the choices were very specific. Artisans had a keen eye for different types of shells, each serving a distinct purpose. For instance, smooth spiraled gastropods were highly prized. Think of shells like cowries or conchs. Their graceful curves and polished surfaces were perfect for creating flowing lines and elegant focal points in a design. The natural spiral of a gastropod is a powerful symbol in itself, often representing the journey of life, evolution, and the unfolding of the universe. When you see one in a mosaic, it's not just a pretty shape. It's a story of growth and continuity. Then we have the bivalves, the classic two-part shells like clams, scallops, and mussels. These were often smaller and used to fill spaces, create textures, or form repeating patterns. Imagine the patience it took to sort through hundreds of tiny bites, finding ones a similar size and color to create a uniform background. The iconic fan shape of the scallop shell, a symbol of pilgrimage and journeys, was especially significant. Its radiating lines were seen as paths leading to a spiritual center. Using a scallop shell was like embedding a prayer for a safe journey or a successful quest into the artwork itself. But not all shells were used whole. Artisans were also masters of transformation. They would take larger, less conventionally beautiful shells and break them into fragments. These pieces would then be tumbled and polished until they shone like jewels. This process allowed them to create a palette of colors and textures that whole shells couldn't provide. Brightly polished fragments could catch the light, adding a shimmering, dynamic quality to the mosaic, mimicking the glint of sunlight on water. This act of breaking and polishing speaks to a theme of renewal and transformation, taking something overlooked and revealing its hidden beauty. Now, let's talk about the sensory experience of choosing these shells. It wasn't just a visual process. Color was, of course, paramount. Artisans would seek out the pearly iridescence of abalone, the warm pinks of conch shells, or the stark, graphic patterns of black and white shells. Colors weren't just decorative, they were symbolic. White often represented purity, light, and the spiritual realm. The deep blues and greens found inside certain mussel shells could evoke the mysterious depths of the ocean. The vibrant oranges and reds might symbolize life, energy, and passion. An artist could literally paint with the ocean's palette, using color to convey mood and meaning. Texture was just as important. Imagine running your fingers over a finished mosaic. You'd feel the smooth, glassy surface of a polished gastropod next to the rough, ridged texture of a bivalve. This tactile contrast brought the artwork to life, making it a multi-sensory experience. The choice of a rough or smooth shell could change the entire feel of a design. A smooth surface might represent tranquility and calm waters, while a rough, textured area could signify the untamed, powerful forces of nature. The artisans weren't just creating something to be seen, they were creating something to be felt. And what about sound? This might seem surprising, but think about it. When you hold a large conch shell to your ear, you hear the sound of the ocean. This ancient belief connected the shell directly to its source. It's possible that artisans considered this auditory connection. By including a shell that carried the echo of the sea, they were embedding a piece of the ocean's soul into their work. Each shell was a tiny vessel, holding the memory of the waves, the tides, and the vast, life-giving water. This brings us to the profound symbolic meanings tied to shells. Across countless cultures, shells are powerful symbols. Because they come from the water, they are intrinsically linked to the source of all life. They represent the feminine principle, fertility, and birth. The way a shell protects the soft creature inside also made it a symbol of protection, shelter, and the home. Think of a hermit crab finding its perfect shell. It is a metaphor for finding one's place in the world. The theme of travel is also deeply embedded in shell symbolism. Shells are carried across vast oceans by currents, washing up on distant shores. They are natural travelers. For this reason, they became emblems for pilgrims, sailors, and explorers, talismans for safe passage and successful voyage. Incorporating shells into art or architecture was a way to invoke blessings for those embarking on a journey, whether physical or spiritual. And finally, we have the powerful idea of renewal. A shell is the remnant of a life that has passed, yet it remains beautiful and enduring. It's a testament to the cycle of life, death, and rebirth. The empty shell is not a sign of absence, but a promise of continuity. It shows that even after life ends, beauty and structure persist, ready to become part of something new. When an artisan placed a shell into a mosaic, they were participating in this cycle, giving the shell a new purpose, a new life as part of a lasting work of art. So, the next time you see an ancient shell mosaic or even a simple shell on the beach, take a moment to consider the choices behind it. It's not just about what looks pretty. It's a deliberate selection based on color, shape, texture, and sound. It's a language of symbols, telling stories of life, water, travel, and renewal. The humble shell, in the hands of a skilled artisan, becomes a powerful conduit for meaning, connecting us to the natural world and to the timeless human quest for beauty and significance. Thank you so much for joining me on this deep dive into the art of choosing shells. If you enjoyed this journey, please like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss our next exploration into the world of ancient art. See you in the next video. Welcome back, history lovers. Today, we're stepping back in time, not to witness a grand battle or the construction of a pyramid, but to a far more intimate and fundamental scene, the workspace of an artisan. Imagine a quiet clearing, a patch of earth flattened by years of patient work. The morning sun cuts through the trees, its warm light falling upon a single piece of hide spread out like a canvas. This isn't just any workspace. It's a sanctuary of creation, a place where raw materials are transformed into objects of purpose and beauty. On this humble stage, the tools of the trade are laid out in a careful, almost ritualistic order. They are not the complex machinery of today, but extensions of the human hand, each one shaped by experience and necessity. Look closely. Here are small, smooth river stones, the hammerstones, their surfaces pitted and worn from countless strikes. They fit perfectly in the palm, their weight a familiar comfort to their owner. Next to them lie the bow knolls, slender and sharp, their points polished to a fine gleam. Each one was painstakingly crafted from the remains of a hunt, a testament to the resourcefulness of our ancestors. And then there are the sandstone grinding slabs, their surfaces coarse and uneven, ready to shape and smooth, to bring form from the formless. The air is still, filled only with the gentle sounds of nature and the quiet focus of the artisan. Watch as the hands move. There is no rush here, no frantic energy. Each movement is deliberate, patient, a slow and rhythmic dance of creation. A hand reaches for a hammerstone, its fingers curling around the cool surface with an ingrained familiarity. The other hand holds a piece of flint, turning it over and over, assessing its angles, its potential. The artisan's eyes are narrowed in concentration, reading the story of the stone, visualizing the tool locked within. The first strike is not a violent blow, but a precise and controlled tap. A sharp crack echoes in the quiet air, and a small flake of flint shears away, falling onto the hide below. Another tap, and then another. The rhythm is steady, almost meditative. It's a language spoken between the artisan and the stone, a conversation that has been happening for thousands of years. The process, known as flint knapping, is one of subtraction, of carefully removing material to reveal the desired shape: a spearhead, a scraper, a knife blade. It requires immense skill, a deep understanding of geology, and an almost intuitive feel for how the stone will break. Now, a different task begins. The hands set aside the hammerstone and pick up a bone awl. A piece of thick leather, perhaps from a deer, is held firm. The awl's sharp point is pressed against the surface, and with a steady, twisting motion, it pierces through. Hole after hole is made, each one perfectly spaced. This is the first step in creating clothing, a bag, or a shelter. It's a meticulous process, each stitch planned, each hole a necessary part of a larger design. The hands work with a practiced grace, the muscles in the fingers and wrist moving with an economy of motion honed over countless hours. Observe the fine dust that coats the artisan's fingers. It's a mixture of stone, bone, and earth, the very elements of this ancient world. The hands now move to the sandstone slab. A rough, unfinished bone needle is placed upon its abrasive surface. With a bit of water and sand, the grinding begins. Back and forth, back and forth. The hands move in a repetitive, circular motion. Slowly, painstakingly, the rough edges are smoothed away. The bone is shaped, thinned, and polished until it becomes a delicate, functional needle. Ready for sewing? This is not work done for instant gratification. It is a testament to the power of persistence. Look at the details on the tools themselves. The wooden handle of a flint knife is wrapped tightly with sinew, providing a secure grip. The sinew itself had to be prepared, stripped from an animal, cleaned, and dried. The hammerstone shows the marks of its own creation, where it was shaped by another, larger stone. Every object in this space tells a story of its origin, a cycle of making and using. There is no waste here. A broken tool is not discarded but reflaked into a smaller one. A shard of flint becomes a tiny, sharp blade for fine carving. Everything has value. Everything has potential. The artisan pauses, holding a nearly finished arrowhead up to the light. The sun illuminates its translucent edges, revealing the delicate ripple patterns left by the flaking process. The edges are razor sharp, a testament to the artisan's skill. A faint smile might touch the artisan's lips, a quiet moment of satisfaction in a job well done. This object is not just a tool for survival. It is a piece of art. Its symmetry, its balance, its deadly beauty all are a result of the artisan's vision and dedication. This small piece of stone represents security, food, and the ability to provide for one's family. As the sun climbs higher in the sky, the work continues. The sounds of tapping, grinding, and scraping form a natural rhythm, a soundtrack to creation. This workspace is more than just a place to make things. It is the heart of the community. It is where knowledge is passed down from one generation to the next, where a child watches a parent and learns the ancient crafts. It is where problems are solved, where new techniques are discovered through trial and error. It is a place of innovation, resilience, and profound connection to the natural world. So the next time you hold a modern tool in your hand, take a moment to think back to this quiet, sunlit patch of earth. Remember the patient hands, the simple yet effective tools, and the incredible skill it took to shape the world with nothing more than stone, bone, and wood. This was the foundation of everything that followed. Thank you for joining me on this journey into the past. If you enjoyed this glimpse into the artisan's world, please like, share, and subscribe for more stories from our shared history. See you next time. Ever wondered how our ancestors, without any modern technology, created the breathtaking art and intricate tools we find today? It wasn't magic, it was mastery. A mastery of simple, yet incredibly effective tools that transformed the world around them. Let's journey back in time and put our hands on these very instruments of creation. First up, meet the burin. This isn't just any sharp rock. A burin is a specialized stone tool, a kind of ancient chisel, specifically designed for engraving. Picture an artisan holding this tool, its sharp, angled tip ready to bite into bone, antler, or ivory. With careful, controlled pressure, they would carve deep, decisive lines. These weren't just random scratches. They were the beginnings of a story, the outline of an animal, or the intricate patterns on a personal ornament. The genius of the burin is its strength and precision. It could groove and shape hard materials without shattering, allowing for detailed artwork that has survived millennia. Holding one, you can almost feel the focused intent required to carve history, one line at a time. It's the tool that gave our ancestors a voice in a medium more permanent than words. Next, let's look at the bone drill. How do you make a hole in a piece of bone or a shell without it splitting into a dozen pieces? You use a drill, of course, but this wasn't a power tool. The earliest drills were often just sharp, pointed pieces of flint, sometimes attached to a wooden shaft. The artisan would place the sharp tip where they wanted the hole and begin to rotate it, either by hand or using a Balak mechanism to spin it faster. It was a slow, patient process. The friction and pressure would gradually wear away the material, creating a perfect, clean hole. Why was this so important? These holes turned flat discs of shell into beads for a necklace, pieces of bone into pendants, and even allowed different parts of a complex tool to be tied together. The bone drill is a testament to our ancestors' problem-solving skills, turning simple objects into functional, wearable art. It represents the desire to connect, to adorn, and to assemble. Now, after all that cutting and drilling, you're left with some rough edges. That's where our third tool comes in. Sandstone. Yes, the same kind of rock you might see forming cliffs and canyons. Its rough, gritty surface makes it the perfect natural sandpaper. Imagine an artisan has just carved a spear thrower from a piece of antler. It's functional, but it's rough, and could even give you splinters. They would take a piece of sandstone and begin to rub it back and forth, smoothing down every bump and sharp edge. Sometimes they'd add water, creating a paste that helped in the polishing process. This wasn't just about aesthetics. A smoother tool is more comfortable to hold, more aerodynamic, and simply works better. Sandstone represents the finishing touch, the dedication to not just making something, but making it well. It's the difference between a rough draft and a finished masterpiece, a process of refinement that speaks to a deep sense of pride in one's work. Finally, we have the fine flint flakes. These are the unsung heroes of the ancient toolkit, the equivalent of a surgeon's scalpel. While larger tools did the heavy lifting, these small, razor-sharp slivers of flint were used for the most delicate tasks. Think of etching the fine details of an animal's fur on a small ivory carving, or cleaning the last tiny burrs from inside a newly drilled bead. The artisan would hold these flakes carefully between their thumb and forefinger, their natural dexterity allowing for incredible control. Creating these flakes was an art in itself, requiring a precise strike on a larger flint core to break off a perfectly thin and sharp piece. These tiny tools show us that our ancestors valued not just the big picture, but the minute details. They represent precision, delicacy, and the pursuit of perfection. So, the burin for bold lines, the drill for creating connections, sandstone for refinement, and flint flakes for the final, perfect details. These 4 tools are more than just shaped stones and bones. They are extensions of the human hand and the human imagination. Think about how each one was perfected. Over countless generations, an artisan would notice that a slightly different angle on a burin made carving easier, or that a certain type of sandstone gave a better polish. This knowledge was passed down, refined with each new pair of hands, each tool becoming more efficient, more ergonomic, and more attuned to its purpose. They were shaped not just by clever hands, but by centuries of collective experience and innovation. They didn't just transform bone and stone, they transformed humanity, allowing us to shape our world, express our creativity, and leave a legacy that continues to inspire us today. Thanks for joining me on this journey. If you enjoyed this, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell for more stories from our deep past. Welcome back to our journey into the art of shell carving. Today, we're getting our hands on these beautiful raw materials for the very first time. This is where the magic truly begins. Preparing the shell. It's a process that requires patience, a gentle hand, and a deep respect for the natural beauty we're working with. So, let's start with the first and most crucial step, cleaning. As you can see, this shell I've selected has just come from the ocean. It's covered in sand, salt residue, and tiny marine organisms. Our goal is to gently remove all this without scratching or damaging the delicate surface. I'm using a soft bristled brush and some fresh, clean water. There's no need for harsh chemicals or soaps. We want to preserve the shell's natural luster. I'll just dip my brush in the water and start scrubbing in small, circular motions. You can hear the gentle sound of the bristles against the shell, almost like a whisper. It is incredibly satisfying to see the true colors and patterns start to emerge from underneath all that grime. I'm paying close attention to all the nooks and crannies, making sure every bit of debris is washed away. For tighter spots, a smaller brush, like an old toothbrush, works wonders. The key here is to be thorough but gentle. Think of it as giving the shell a spa day before its big transformation. Once I'm happy with the cleaning, I'll rinse it one last time under cool running water and then set it on a soft towel to air dry completely. It's important to let it dry naturally, as using heat could make it brittle and prone to cracking later on. Look at that. Already, it's looking so much brighter and more vibrant. The iridescence is starting to peek through. Now that our shell is clean and dry, we move on to the next phase, inspecting and removing the brittle edges. The lip of the shell is often the thinnest and most fragile part. It can easily chip or break unexpectedly during the carving process, which can be heartbreaking. So, we want to proactively remove these weak sections to create a solid, stable foundation for our design. For this, I use a small, hard stone. You could also use a specialized tool, but I love the organic feel of using stone on shell. I'm going to gently tap along the edge. Listen closely. You can hear the difference in sound. A solid, resonant tap means the area is strong. A dull, hollow thud tells me that part is weak and needs to go. It's a bit like a doctor tapping on a patient's back and listening for clues. Here, this section sounds a bit weak. So, with a careful, controlled pressure, I'm going to chip it away. It's not about brute force. It's about finding the shell's natural breaking points and working with them. I'll just apply a little pressure here. And there it goes. A clean break. I'll continue this all the way around the edge, removing any part that feels compromised. This step ensures that the piece we eventually carve will be strong and last for generations. It's all about setting ourselves up for success. With the edges secured, we can now begin the most exciting part of the preparation. The initial shaping. This is where we start to see the first hints of the final piece, whether it's a pendant, a bead, or an intricate inlay. My goal today isn't to create the final shape, but to rough it out, to block out the basic form from the larger shell. This is called preforming. I'm going to continue using my trusty stone. By striking the shell with controlled force and at a specific angle, I can break off larger pieces and begin to define a rough outline. I've decided I want to create a few teardrop-shaped pendants from this section of the shell. So, I'll visualize where those pendants will come from and start chipping away the excess material around them. Each tap is a decision. You have to read the shell, feel its thickness, and anticipate how it will fracture. It's a conversation between the artisan and the material. You can hear the sharp crack as a larger piece breaks away, followed by the softer sound of me brushing the smaller fragments aside. It's a rhythmic process. Tap, chip, brush. Tap, chip, brush. I'm not rushing. I'm taking my time, slowly revealing the shape hidden within. You can see how this rough, irregular piece is starting to resemble a teardrop. It's still very crude, but the basic form is there. This is the foundation upon which all the detailed carving and polishing will be built. It is like a sculptor, creating the basic human form from a block of marble, before adding the fine details of the face and muscles. Getting this initial shape right is absolutely essential. Let's work on another one right next to it. I see a beautiful curve here that I want to preserve. So I'll adjust my angle and apply a bit less pressure. It's all about adapting your technique to the specific shell you're working with. No two shells are ever the same, and that's part of the joy and the challenge of this craft. Each piece tells its own unique story, starting from these very first taps. Now, I'll just clear away the debris so we can have a good look at what we've accomplished. From a single rosy shell, we now have these rough-hewn blanks, each one holding the promise of a beautiful piece of jewelry. We've cleaned them, secured their edges, and given them their initial form. The journey has just begun, but these foundational steps are arguably the most important. Thank you so much for joining me for this quiet, meditative process. It's a reminder that beautiful things take time and care to create. I hope you enjoyed the soft sounds of the workshop and feel inspired. Join me next time as we take these rough shapes and begin the fine carving work. Don't forget to like and subscribe so you don't miss it. See you soon. This is where the magic and a lot of patience truly begins. We're going to drill the central hole. This isn't about power tools or brute force. This is about a conversation between our hands and the shell. My tool of choice is a simple bone awl, sharpened to a fine, sturdy point. See how it rests perfectly between my palms. This is the engine. The motion is ancient, rhythmic, and hypnotic. I place the tip right at the heart of the shell, where the spiral begins. Now, watch. I apply gentle, steady pressure and begin to rotate the awl back and forth. It's a bit like starting a fire with a hand drill. The friction does the work. At first, it feels like nothing is happening. The surface of the shell is hard, resistant. It's testing my resolve, but I trust the process. I listen with my fingertips. The sound is a soft, gritty whisper, a shushing sound, like sand being stirred by a gentle wave. It's the sound of transformation, particle by tiny particle. You can't rush this. If you pressed too hard, the shell, for all its strength, will fracture. It's a paradox. It's incredibly durable, yet fragile under the wrong kind of stress. It demands respect. So I find a rhythm, a steady back and forth motion. My hands become a blur, but the pressure at the tip remains constant and delicate. It's a meditative act. My mind clears, and my focus narrows down to this single point of contact. The world outside fades away, and it's just me, the awl, and the shell. The rhythm of my hands becomes the rhythm of my breath. In, out, back, forth. After a few minutes, something changes. The feel through the bone all shifts. The resistance lessens just a fraction. This is the breakthrough moment we've been working towards. I've pierced the initial, toughest layer of the shell. A tiny divot has formed, a little crater that will now guide the awl and keep it from slipping. This is our foothold. Now, the real work of deepening the hole begins. I can be a little more confident in my rotation, but the pressure remains key. It's a constant negotiation. The shell tells me how much it can take, and I listen. Sometimes, I'll pause, pull the awl out, and blow away the fine white powder that has accumulated. It looks like fine flour, the dust of our labor. This dust is a testament to progress. Each grain represents a moment of effort, a turn of the hands. Look closely at the tip of the awl. See how it's slowly, but surely, sinking deeper into the shell. This process could take an hour, maybe more, depending on the thickness and density of this particular shell. Every shell is an individual, with its own character and its own challenges. You can't apply a one-size-fits-all approach. You have to be present. You have to adapt. This is what I mean when I talk about the connection to the material. I'm not just drilling a hole. I'm feeling the layers of its life. Each layer of nacre was laid down by the creature that lived within, a slow and patient process of creation. And now, I am mirroring that patience in my own act of creation. It feels like a collaboration across time. The hole is getting deeper now. I can feel the change in texture as I drill through different layers. Sometimes it's smoother. Sometimes it's grittier. It's like reading a story written in calcium carbonate. My hands might start to ache. My palms might get a little raw. But it's a good feeling. It's the feeling of honest work, of creating something with your own two hands. And then it happens. A subtle but distinct pop. A release of tension. The tip of the awl breaks through the other side. It's an incredibly satisfying moment. All that patience, all that rhythmic effort has paid off. I slow down immediately, my movements becoming even more delicate. The final stage is to gently widen and smooth the hole from both sides, ensuring there are no sharp edges that could cut the cord it will eventually be strung on. I use the awl now not as a drill, but as a reamer. A gentle, twisting motion, clearing away the last of the debris. I turn the shell over and work from the other side, creating a slight countersink, a smooth, beveled edge. This makes the finished piece not only more beautiful, but also more durable. And there we have it. A perfect, clean hole, drilled not by machine, but by hand. It's not just a hole. It's the heart of the pendant, the channel through which it will be connected to its wearer. It carries the story of its creation in its very form. It took time, it took focus, and it took a deep respect for the material. And that, right there, is a reward in itself. Thanks for joining me in this quiet, focused part of the journey. Stick around as we move on to the next step. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you're enjoying this process. See you in a bit. Welcome back to our journey into the world of ancient craftsmanship. Today, we're exploring the final, magical step in creating something truly beautiful. The art of polishing. We've drilled and shaped our bead, but right now, it's just a rough, matte object. It holds potential, but its soul is still hidden. The real transformation, the moment it comes alive, happens now. Imagine an artisan, thousands of years ago, sitting with a simple piece of sandstone. They take the roughly shaped shell bead and begin to rub it against the stone's abrasive surface. With each stroke, a fine powder rises, carrying away the imperfections. The motion is rhythmic, almost meditative. It's a slow, patient dance between hand, shell, and stone. You can almost hear the soft, scraping sound, a whisper of creation. This isn't a process to be rushed. It requires focus and a deep connection with the material. The artisan feels the surface changing under their fingertips, the rough edges softening, the shape becoming more perfect and symmetrical. After the initial smoothing with sandstone, the texture is finer, but the bead still lacks that captivating glow. The next stage often involves something softer, like a piece of well-worn leather. Perhaps it's a scrap of deer hide, supple and slightly oiled from use. The artisan now buffs the bead against the leather with firm, circular motions. This is where the true alchemy begins. The friction generates a gentle warmth, and the fine surface of the shell starts to change on a microscopic level. The countless tiny scratches left by the sandstone are smoothed away, flattened into a uniform plane. And then, you see it. A flicker of light. At first, it's just a soft sheen, a subtle hint of the treasure within. The artisan, seeing this first glimmer, would feel a surge of excitement. Their hard work is paying off. They continue buffing, their movements becoming more vigorous, more focused. The dull, chalky surface retreats, giving way to a deep, pearlescent luster. The nacre, the iridescent layer of the shell, begins to play with the light. It's like watching a sunrise unfold in miniature. The colors shift and dance pinks, greens, blues all shimmering just beneath the surface. This is the moment of revelation. The bead is no longer just a piece of shell. It has been reborn. It catches the light as if it were still wet, freshly plucked from the ancient sea. It holds the memory of the ocean, of waves and tides, captured in its radiant glow. Holding it up to the sun, the artisan would see the world reflected in its tiny, curved surface. This isn't just about making an object. It's about revealing its inherent beauty, coaxing its inner light to the surface. The bead now possesses a life of its own, a visual and tactile delight. What drove these artisans? It wasn't just about utility. A simple, unpolished bead could still be strung on a cord. No, this was about something more profound. It was about the pursuit of perfection, the deep, intrinsic pleasure that comes from creating something beautiful with one's own hands. It's a universal human impulse we still feel today. Think about the satisfaction of polishing a car until it gleams, or sanding a piece of wood until it's perfectly smooth. There's a joy in the process itself. For the ancient craftsperson, this final act of polishing was a conversation with the material. They weren't imposing their will on the shell, but rather collaborating with it, helping it become the most beautiful version of itself. This dedication to craft for its own sake is a powerful legacy. It speaks to a desire for excellence, for beauty, and for a connection to the materials of our world. Each polished bead was a small testament to human ingenuity and our timeless appreciation for things made with care and passion. The process of taking something raw and unrefined and, through patience and skill, transforming it into an object of radiant beauty is a metaphor for so many things in life. It is about seeing the potential in the ordinary and having the dedication to bring it to light. The artisan didn't just make a bead. They created a tiny vessel of light and history, a piece of wearable art that would be cherished, traded, and passed down through generations. This transformation from dull to dazzling is what elevates craft to art. It's the final breath of life given to the creation, the moment it transcends its humble origins. When you see an ancient, polished artifact in a museum, remember the hands that spent hours patiently rubbing and buffing just to see it shine. They weren't just making an object. They were capturing a piece of the sun. Thanks for joining me on this deep dive into the art of finishing. I hope it gives you a new appreciation for the beautiful objects around us. If you enjoyed this, please like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss our next exploration into the past. See you next time. Today, we're journeying deep into the past, over 13,000 years ago, to explore the incredible artistry of the Clovis people. We often talk about their amazing hunting tools, but their personal adornments, their jewelry, tell an equally fascinating story of creativity and skill. These weren't just simple decorations. They were complex expressions of identity, belief, and beauty, made by combining materials in ways that are both ingenious and aesthetically stunning. So, let's dive into the world of Clovis art and uncover the secrets behind their stone, bone, and shell combinations. When we think of jewelry, we often think of single materials, like a string of pearls or a gold chain. But Clovis artisans were master mixers. They understood that combining different elements could create something far more captivating. Imagine a necklace from the Clovis period. It wouldn't just be a string of shells. It might feature a central, beautifully polished stone pendant, smooth and cool to the touch. Flanking the centerpiece, you might find a series of delicate shell beads. Jejich, Simarin, Idi the Sensei, catching taillight, and interspersed between these shells, tiny, meticulously carved bone spacers, adding a rhythmic pattern and a different texture to the piece. This practice of mixing materials wasn't random. It was guided by sophisticated aesthetic principles. One of the most important was balance. A Clovis artisan creating a necklace or a bracelet would think carefully about visual weight. A larger, heavier stone pendant might be balanced by groups of smaller, lighter shell beads on either side. It's a principle we still use in design today. Think about it. A single, large focal point needs smaller elements to support it, not compete with it. The Clovis people understood this intuitively. They created pieces that felt harmonious and complete, where every single element had its place and purpose. Let's explore some of these combinations. A common find at Clovis sites are drilled animal teeth, often from predators like wolves or bears. These weren't just thrown on a string. A drilled canine tooth, with its powerful, curved shape, might be the star of a piece. To complement its natural form, an artisan might add rows of small, uniform disc beads carved from bone. The contrast is striking. You have the wild, untamed shape of the tooth next to the precise, human-made geometry of the beads. This juxtaposition of the natural and the crafted creates a dynamic tension that makes the piece incredibly compelling. It tells a story of taming the wild, or perhaps honoring its power. Another key principle was contrast, not just in shape, but in color and texture. The deep, earthy red of a polished hematite pendant would look stunning against the creamy white of bird bone beads. The smooth, glossy surface of a river pebble would feel entirely different next to the slightly rougher, organic texture of a marine shell. The Clovis people lived in a world of rich, natural textures, and they brought this sensory awareness into their art. They didn't just want their adornments to look good. They wanted them to feel interesting, to engage more than just the sense of sight. Running your fingers over one of these pieces would be a tactile journey, from smooth stone to ridged shell to polished bone. And then there's the idea of movement. Imagine these pieces being worn. They weren't static objects in a museum case. They were part of a living, moving person. A fringe of dangling bone or shell beads sewn onto a tunic would sway and clatter with every step. A necklace with multiple strands of small, lightweight seeds or beads would shift and flow as the wearer moved. The artisans designed for this. They understood how different materials would hang, how they would catch the light when in motion, and how they would interact with the body. The designs were kinetic, alive with the energy of the person wearing them. Let's not forget about sound. This is an element of jewelry we rarely consider today. But for a people living so close to nature, sound was a vital part of JEJICH world. A string of shell beads would create a soft, rustling sound, reminiscent of wind through dry leaves or water over stones. Denser bone or stone elements would produce a lower, more resonant clicking. Imagine a dancer, adorned with pieces designed to create a percussive accompaniment to their movements. The jewelry becomes an instrument. The sound could be part of a ritual, a way to mark one's presence, or simply a source of personal, quiet pleasure. The choice of materials would directly influence the sound, and it's almost certain that Clovis artisans made these choices. Now, let's look at a specific example. The Enziquan burial in Montana. This is the only known Clovis era human burial, and it contained a wealth of artifacts. Among them were over 100 tools made of bone and ivory, many of them coated in red ochre. These weren't just tools for daily use. They were ceremonial objects, imbued with symbolic power. While not jewelry in the traditional sense, the care, the material choice, and the use of color show us the deep spiritual and aesthetic significance these people placed on objects. If they put this much care into their tools, imagine the thought that went into the items they wore on their bodies every day. The materials themselves held meaning. A pendant made from a meteorite fragment wasn't just a cool-looking rock. It was a piece of the sky. A necklace of wolf teeth wasn't just decorative. It was a symbol of strength, of the hunter's skill, and a connection to a powerful spirit animal. The shells, traded over hundreds of miles from the coast, were a tangible link to distant places and a symbol of a vast social network. By combining these materials, a Clovis person could literally wear their story, their status, and their connection to the wider world. A single piece of jewelry could be a map of their life's journey and their place in the cosmos. So, when we look at these ancient combinations of stone, bone, and shell, we're not just looking at primitive we are seeing the work of true artists. They mastered their materials, understood the principles of design, and created objects of profound beauty and meaning. They balanced form and function, texture and color, movement and sound, to create a wearable art that was deeply personal and culturally significant. It's a powerful reminder that the human desire to create beauty, to tell stories, and to adorn ourselves is as old as humanity itself. Thank you so much for joining me on this journey back in time. I hope it gives you a new appreciation for the incredible artistry of the Clovis people. What do you think is the most fascinating aspect of their mixed media jewelry? Let me know in the comments below. Don't forget to like this video, Subscribe for more deep dives into our ancient past, and hit that notification bell so you never miss an update. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. How did our ancestors create jewelry that could last for thousands of years? It all starts with the string. Long before metal chains, people found incredible strength and beauty in the natural world. Let's explore how they made the cords for their precious necklaces. One of the most important materials was sinew, the tough, fibrous tissue from animals. After a successful hunt, nothing went to waste. Sinew would be carefully removed, cleaned, and dried. Once it was stiff, it would be pounded with a stone to break it down. Then, by chewing it or soaking it in water, it would become soft and pliable, almost like a thick, sticky thread. The artisan would then roll these soft fibers, often against their thigh, twisting them together to create a remarkably strong cord. This sinew thread was not only tough, but also had a natural stickiness when wet that helped it grip the beads and then shrink tight as it dried, holding everything securely in place. But animals weren't the sole source. The plant kingdom offered a huge variety of materials. Think about the long, tough fibers from plants like nettle, yucca, milkweed, or the inner bark of certain trees like linden or cedar. These fibers had to be harvested at just the right time of year. They would then undergo a process called retting, where they were soaked in water to rot away the fleshy parts of the plant, leaving only the strong inner fibers behind. After drying, these fibers would be painstakingly separated and combed out. Once the individual fibers were prepared, whether from animal or plant, the real magic began. To create a longer, stronger thread, they used a technique called spinning. By taking a small bundle of fibers and twisting them, they created a continuous yarn. Early on, this was done entirely by hand, rolling the fibers together. Later, a tool called a drop spindle was invented. This was essentially a stick with a weight, or whirl, at the bottom. By giving it a spin, it would continuously twist the fibers being fed into it, creating a much more consistent and even thread, much faster than by hand alone. It's a technology we still use in some form today, but for a truly durable necklace, especially one holding heavy stone or shell beads, a single thread wasn't enough. That's where braiding came in. Betacking 2 or 3, or even more spun threads, and interlacing them. Our ancestors created incredibly strong cords, a simple 3-strand braid, just like braiding hair, dramatically increases the strength and resistance to snapping. More complex braiding techniques could create flat bands or round, rope-like cords. These braided cords were not just functional, they were decorative in their own right, adding another layer of artistry to the finished piece. The skill involved was immense, creating a cord strong enough to carry precious ornaments for years, even lifetimes. Now, with a strong cord ready, the artistic arrangement of the beads could begin. This was far from a random process. It was a thoughtful and deliberate design. Imagine an artisan laying out their collection of beads, gleaming shells, colorful stones, carved bones. They wouldn't just string them on haphazardly. There was a rhythm and a plan. One common technique was alternating colors. A dark bead, followed by a light one. Then dark, then light, creating a striking, dynamic pattern that caught the eye. This contrast could have been purely for beauty, or it might have held a deeper symbolic meaning: day and night, earth and sky. They also played with texture, alternating smooth, polished stones with rough, unworked shells. Another sophisticated design principle was graduation. Instead of using beads of all the same size, they would arrange them in a gradual progression. Often, the largest and most impressive bead would be placed right in the center, the focal point of the entire necklace. From this central bead, the others would gradually decrease in size as they moved up toward the clasp or tie at the back of the neck. This creates a beautiful, tapered look that lies elegantly on the wearer's chest. It essayed design principles so effective and aesthetically pleasing that we still see it in high-end jewelry today. They might also group beads by type. A section of bird bone beads might be followed by a section of clay beads, then a section of polished stone beads. These groupings could tell a story, represent different elements of the natural world, or mark personal achievements. The arrangement wasn't just about making something pretty. It was a form of communication, a wearable story. Every choice, the material of the cord, the type of beads, their color, their size, and their order was a decision that contributed to the final masterpiece. So, the next time you see an ancient necklace in a museum, look closely not just at the beads, but at the string that holds them together and the pattern in which they're arranged. You're seeing the culmination of incredible skill, from the processing of raw fibers to the thoughtful, artistic vision of its creator. It is a testament to a deep connection with the natural world and an enduring human desire to create beauty. Thanks so much for watching and exploring this piece of ancient technology with me. If you enjoyed this, please like the video and subscribe for more journeys into the past. See you next time. Ever wondered what your jewelry says about you? For us, it might be about fashion or a special memory. But for our ancient ancestors, a simple necklace was a whole lot more. It was their resume, their passport, their family tree, and their spiritual guide, all rolled into one. Today, we're journeying back in time, over 10,000 years ago, to explore how Paleoindian necklaces were powerful symbols of personal identity. Imagine a world without written language, without social media profiles. How would you tell someone who you are, where you're from, what you've accomplished? For Paleoindians, the answer was often worn around their neck. The materials they used, the way they were crafted, every detail was a clue. A necklace wasn't just an accessory, it was a story. Let's start with status. In many early societies, rare and hard-to-get materials were a clear sign of prestige. Think about it. If you're wearing something that took immense effort to acquire, it shows you have resources, skill, or influence. For Paleoindians, this could mean beads made from specific types of stone that were only found hundreds of miles away, a necklace featuring obsidian from a distant volcano, or a high-quality shirt from a specific quarry told everyone that you were a group or well-traveled, well-connected, and powerful enough to trade for or access these prized materials. The more exotic the material, the higher your status. It's like wearing a designer brand, but instead of a logo, the material itself was the label. Then there's clan and group identity. Paleoindian groups were often small, mobile bands of hunter-gatherers. Distinguishing friend from foe, or identifying members of your own extended kin group, was crucial for survival. Necklaces could have acted like a uniform or a family crest. Perhaps a certain pattern of beads, or the use of a particular animal tooth, signified that you belonged to the bison clan or the river people. These visual cues would have been instantly recognizable, fostering a sense of community and belonging. When you met a stranger on the vast plains, a quick glance at their adornments could tell you if you shared a common ancestry or alliance. It was a silent language that spoke volumes about kinship and social ties. Now, let's talk about travel history. These weren't just static communities. Paleoindians moved across huge landscapes, following herds of megafauna, like mammoths and bison. Their necklaces were like a scrapbook of their journeys. The most fascinating examples of this are seashells found at inland archaeological sites, thousands of miles from the nearest coast. Picture a hunter on the Great Plains, wearing a necklace of delicate olive shells from the Gulf of Mexico or shimmering abalone from the Pacific. Each shell was a tangible link to a distant place, a memory of a long journey, or a story of a trade network that stretched across the continent. These weren't just souvenirs. They were proof of an individual's life experience, their knowledge of the land, and their connection to a wider world. The necklace became a map of their life's travels. We also can't forget the spiritual dimension. For ancient peoples, the natural and supernatural worlds were deeply intertwined. Certain objects were believed to hold special power or offer protection. A necklace made from the claws of a bear or the tooth of a saber-toothed cat was not just a trophy. It was a way to harness the animal's spirit, its strength, and its courage. A shaman or a spiritual leader might wear specific items, a uniquely shaped stone, a fossil, or a rare crystal that signified their role as a bridge between the physical and spirit worlds. These items weren't chosen at random. They were powerful amulets, talismans that protected the wearer, healed the sick, and ensured a successful hunt. The necklace was a tool for interacting with the unseen forces that governed their world. To put this in perspective, let's look at some specific examples from the archaeological record. At the Lindenmeyer site in Colorado, a Folsom era camp dating back over 12,000 years, archaeologists found incised bone beads. The intricate geometric patterns etched into them are not random doodles. They are deliberate designs that almost certainly carried specific meanings, perhaps unique to that particular group, or even an individual. Were they kill tallies, lunar calendars, family symbols? We may never know for sure, but their complexity tells us they were communicating something important. Similarly, in burials from the Clovis period, the earliest widespread culture in North America, we sometimes find offerings of beads made from materials like hematite and red ochre. The color red was often associated with life, blood, and rebirth in many cultures worldwide. Placing these beads with the deceased suggests a belief in an afterlife and the importance of carrying one's identity and status beyond death. The necklace wasn't just for the living, it was part of your eternal identity. Comparing this to other Paleoindian cultures around the world, we see similar patterns. In Europe, during the Upper people were creating stunning necklaces from mammoth ivory, animal teeth, and imported seashells. At the Sunjia site in Russia, 2 children were buried approximately 34,000 years ago, adorned with thousands of painstakingly crafted mammoth ivory beads, along with belts and other ornaments. The sheer labor involved, it is estimated each bead took over an hour to make, speaks to the immense social value placed on these individuals. Their adornments clearly communicated their incredibly high status within their community. So, from the plains of North America to the steppes of Siberia, personal adornment was a universal human language long before writing. A necklace was a dynamic object. It wasn't just made once and then worn. It could be added to over a lifetime. A new shell from a journey to the coast, a tooth from a memorable hunt. A bead received in trade, each edition enriched the story the necklace told. It grew and evolved with the person, becoming a physical chronicle of their existence. The next time you see a simple strand of ancient beads in a museum, look closer. Don't just see it as a piece of primitive jewelry. Try to read the story it tells. See the status of the person who sourced its rare materials. See the family ties in its unique pattern. See the map of their life's journey in the exotic shells, and feel the spiritual power they believed resided within it. These necklaces are a profound reminder that the need to express who we are, our identity, our history, and our place in the world is one of the most fundamental and enduring aspects of the human experience. It's a story that has been worn around our necks for tens of thousands of years. Thanks for joining us on this journey back in time. If you found this fascinating, hit that like button and subscribe for more deep dives into our ancient past. Until next time, stay curious. Imagine stepping back in time over 13,000 years ago to the world of the Clovis people. The air is crisp, the landscape is vast and untamed, filled with mammoths and mastodons. But life wasn't just about the hunt. Between the thrilling chases and the long migrations, there were moments of quiet, of community, and of creation. This is the story of those moments. A look into the social world of Clovis jewelry making. Picture a small encampment nestled by a river. The sun is setting, casting a warm, golden glow. The successful hunters have returned, not just with meat to feed the families, but with other treasures. Antler, bone, and perhaps even a tusk fragment. These materials, hard-won from the giants of the Ice Age, held a special significance. They weren't just resources. They were symbols of strength, courage, and a successful hunt that sustained the group. But the materials for their adornments didn't only come from the land. The Clovis people were far-ranging, and their trade networks were surprisingly extensive. Shells from distant coasts, colorful stones from riverbeds. Hundreds of miles away, these items would travel from hand to hand, group to group, carrying with them stories of their origins. When a child held a smooth, pearlescent shell, they weren't just holding a pretty object. They were holding a connection to a world far beyond their immediate horizon. In the heart of the camp, the work would begin. This wasn't a solitary task, but a deeply communal one. Think of the scene. A small group gathers as the day cools. The children, their small hands surprisingly nimble, are given the task of sorting. They sit together, their chatter a soft background noise, as they separate shells by size, shape, and color. They learn to identify the best ones, the ones without cracks, the ones that catch the light just right. This isn't just play. It's their first lesson in material science, in quality control, in contributing to the group's artistry. Nearby, the elders sit, their faces etched with the wisdom of countless seasons. They don't do the hard physical work anymore, but their role is perhaps the most crucial. They are the keepers of knowledge. An elder might lean over, his voice raspy but clear, advising a younger woman on the best angle to drill a hole in a piece of bone without it splitting. He points with a gnarled finger, demonstrating how to use a sharp flint point, twisting it patiently, a technique perfected over a lifetime. He shares stories of his own first attempts, the mistakes he made, and the lessons he learned. This is how tradition is passed down, not through written words, but through direct, personal mentorship. The younger adults, both men and women, are the main artisans. They sit focused, their hands busy. One might be carefully grinding the edge of a shell against a rough sandstone, smoothing it into a perfect circle. The rhythmic scraping sound is a constant, almost meditative, part of the camp's soundscape. Another might be using a fine-tipped stone tool to etch a delicate pattern, a zigzag, a series of lines, or a sunburst onto a piece of ivory. Each design might hold a specific meaning, a story, or a prayer. This wasn't an assembly line. It was a collaborative workshop. Someone might struggle with a particularly tough piece of antler. A friend sitting next to them would pause their own work, offering a different tool or a suggestion. Try this piece of flint. It has a finer edge. Or let's soak it in water for a bit to soften it. They would share successes. 2. Holding up a newly finished pendant for others to admire. The glint of pride in their eyes. The words of praise from their peers. This was the reward. It reinforced their skills and strengthened their social bonds. The jewelry they created was more than just decoration. Each piece was a repository of meaning. A necklace of bone beads might represent the number of successful hunts a person had been on. A pendant carved from a mammoth tusk might be a powerful amulet, believed to offer protection and strength. When a hunter wore such an item, he wasn't just showing off. He was carrying the collective strength and spirit of his community with him. These adornments also served as markers of identity, just as we might wear a team jersey or a national flag. Clovis jewelry could signify membership in a particular family, clan, or a regional group. When different Clovis bands met during seasonal gatherings, their unique styles of jewelry would have been an instant visual language, communicating who they were and where they came from. It was a way of saying, we are the people of the Winding River, or we are the people of the Mammoth Plains. Imagine a young person receiving their first significant piece of jewelry, perhaps a carefully crafted necklace given to them to mark their coming of age. This wouldn't be a casual gift. It would be a formal presentation, an object imbued with the hopes and blessings of their elders. The materials were gathered by the brave, the design was guided by the wise, and the crafting was done by the skilled hands of their own family, wherein it was a promise to uphold the traditions, to contribute to the community, and to one day pass that knowledge on to the next generation. And what about the finished pieces? They weren't locked away. They were worn, used, and sometimes purposefully left behind. Archaeologists have found caches of Clovis artifacts, including beautifully made tools and jewelry, intentionally buried. Were these offerings to the spirits of the land? Were they ritual caches, created to sanctify a particular place? Or were they a way of leaving a mark, a message to future generations? We can't know for sure, but it shows that these objects had a life and a purpose that went far beyond simple adornment. These quiet hours of creativity were essential to the fabric of Clovis society. They were a time for teaching and learning, for sharing and cooperating. They were a time for transforming the raw materials of their world into objects of beauty and profound meaning. It was in these moments, between the epic hunts and the long journeys, that the Clovis people truly built their culture. One bead, one shell, one carefully carved pendant at a time. The skills of the hunt fed their bodies, but the skills of the artisan fed their souls and strengthened the bonds that allowed them to thrive in a challenging world. So, the next time you see a picture of a small, elegant Clovis artifact in a museum, don't just see a tool or a piece of jewelry. See the hands that made it. Hear the quiet chatter of children sorting shells, Picture the patient guidance of an elder and the focused concentration of a young creator. See a whole community working together, sharing their knowledge and their lives, captured in a single, beautiful object from the Ice Age. Thanks for joining us on this journey back to the world of the Clovis people. If you found this glimpse into the past as fascinating as I do, be sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel for more stories from our deep history. We'll see you next time. Have you ever wondered why we wear jewelry? Is it just for decoration? Or is there something deeper, something ancient, woven into these objects we adorn ourselves with? Today, we're journeying back in time, tens of thousands of years, to uncover the ritual uses and ceremonial significance of the very first necklaces. We're not just talking about fashion statements. We're talking about objects imbued with power, meaning, and the very essence of what it meant to be human. Imagine a world lit only by the flickering flames of a fire. The community is gathered, huddled together against the vast darkness. A young person is coming of age. An elder is being honored, or perhaps the tribe is preparing for a great hunt. In these pivotal moments, these rites of passage, certain individuals would step forward, adorned with special necklaces. These weren't everyday items. They were sacred, brought out only for the most important occasions. Think about the materials they used: smooth, water-worn pebbles, shells with intricate patterns, the teeth of powerful animals. These weren't just random finds. Each piece was carefully selected for its unique properties. A shell that once housed a living creature might symbolize life, fertility, or the cyclical nature of existence. The tooth of a cave bear or a wolf could represent the transfer of that animal's strength, courage, and spirit to the wearer. These necklaces were a physical manifestation of an invisible power. Now, let's close our eyes and really immerse ourselves in that scene. The fire crackles, casting long, dancing shadows. As the wearer moves, a soft, rhythmic jingle emanates from the shells and bones of their necklace. It's a sound that becomes part of the ceremony itself, a subtle percussion accompanying the chants. The stories, the very heartbeat of the tribe. This sound wasn't just noise. It was music, a sacred frequency that helped transport the participants from the ordinary world into a spiritual realm. It was a sound that unified the group, connecting everyone present in a shared, transcendent experience. Archaeologists have found necklaces in burials, carefully placed around the neck or on the chest of the deceased. This tells us that their significance extended beyond life itself. Placing a necklace on a loved one for their final journey suggests a belief in an afterlife, a world beyond this one where the protection and identity offered by the necklace were still needed. It was a final gift, a tool for the spirit, ensuring they were recognized by ancestors or protected from unknown dangers in the great beyond. Let's consider the concept of sympathetic magic. Tadia, that light produces light. Many of the earliest beads and pendants were shaped by water. Think of a smooth, round pebble from a riverbed. For our ancestors, water was the ultimate life-giving force. It quenched thirst, it brought fish and game to its banks, and it was essential for the plants they gathered. By wearing an object shaped by this powerful element, they believed they could carry a piece of its life-giving and protective power with them. A necklace of river stones wasn't just beautiful, it was a portable source of life's essence, a talisman against drought, sickness, and misfortune. These ceremonial necklaces also served as powerful identity markers. Within a group, different types of necklaces might signify different roles. The shaman's necklace would be distinct from the hunter's, which would be different from the matriarch's. The materials, complexity, and specific symbols would communicate a person's status, their skills, and their spiritual connections, without a single word being spoken. When different tribes gathered, their necklaces would be an instant identifier, a visual language declaring who they were and where they came from. They were like a passport and a resume, all rolled into one beautiful, symbolic object. Let's dig into the process of making one of these necklaces. It wasn't a quick or easy task. Finding the right shells, drilling tiny holes with a sharp piece of flint, and then stringing them on a cord of animal sinew or plant fiber required immense patience, skill, and dedication. This slow, deliberate act of creation was a ritual in itself. As the maker worked, they would imbue the object with their intentions, their prayers, their energy. The finished necklace wasn't just a collection of parts. It was a vessel of human creativity and spiritual focus. The very act of making it was a form of magic. Imagine a coming-of-age ceremony. An adolescent standing on the cusp of adulthood is presented with their first significant necklace. This isn't just a gift, it's an initiation. As the necklace is placed over their head, they are symbolically leaving childhood behind and accepting the responsibilities and privileges of their new role in the tribe. The weight of it on their shoulders is a constant physical reminder of their identity and their connection to the community. It's a tangible link to their ancestors who wore similar necklaces before them, and to the generations that will come after. Furthermore, these objects were living histories. A single necklace could be passed down through generations, with new beads or pendants added to commemorate significant events. A successful hunt might be marked by adding a wolf tooth. The birth of a child could be celebrated with a special, iridescent shell. Over time, the necklace becomes a chronicle of the family or lineage, a wearable storybook that tells of triumphs, journeys, and key life moments. Holding such an object would be like holding the history of your people in your hands. So, the next time you put on a necklace, take a moment to think about its ancient roots. It's a tradition that stretches back into the deepest parts of our human story. It connects us to those firelit ceremonies, to the belief in the power of symbols, and to the universal human desire to adorn ourselves with meaning. These ancient necklaces were so much more than simple ornaments. They were tools for transformation, badges of identity, containers of power, and bridges between the physical and spiritual worlds. They were, in essence, a fundamental part of what it meant to be human. Thanks so much for joining me on this journey back in time. If you found this fascinating, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss our next exploration into the ancient world. See you next time. Have you ever received a gift that was so special, so personal, that you've kept it for years? Maybe it's a hand-knitted scarf from your grandma, a drawing from your child, or a mixtape from a high school friend. There's something magical about a handmade gift, isn't there? It's not just an object. It's a piece of someone's time, their effort, their affection, all wrapped up into something you can hold. Today, we're going to travel back in time, long before online shopping and next-day delivery, to a world where gifts weren't just about birthdays or holidays. They were the very threads that wove society together. We're talking about a time when a simple shell necklace could seal a peace treaty, unite two families in marriage, or mark the change of seasons. These weren't just trinkets. They were powerful symbols of connection, trust, and community. Imagine ancient coastal communities. The sea provides everything: food, tools, and even beauty. The people would spend countless hours walking the shores, searching for the most beautiful, most unique shells. Each one was a small treasure, a gift from the ocean. But they didn't just keep these treasures for themselves. They would carefully drill tiny holes, polish the rough edges, and string them together, creating magnificent necklaces. These weren't your average accessories. The effort that went into making just one necklace was immense. It required patience, skill, and an eye for beauty. When someone gave you a shell necklace, they were giving you a part of their life. They were giving you hours of their time, a testament to your importance in their world. Think about two neighboring tribes who have been rivals for generations. Tensions are high. A simple misunderstanding could lead to conflict. How do you build a bridge? How do you create trust where there is none? You do it with a gift. The leader of one tribe might approach the other, not with weapons, but with a stunning, intricately crafted shell necklace. This wasn't just a pretty object. It was a message. It said, "We value you. We want peace. We have spent time and energy creating this for you because our future relationship is important to us." Accepting that necklace was a powerful act. It was a promise. It said, "We see your effort. We accept your offer of peace. We will wear this as a symbol of our new alliance." That necklace would then be passed down through generations. A child would ask their parent, "Where did this beautiful necklace come from?" And the parent would tell the story of how their ancestors made peace with their neighbors. The necklace becomes a living history lesson, a constant reminder of the importance of diplomacy and friendship. It's an emotional tie that outlasts a single lifetime, connecting the past, present, and future. Now, let's consider marriage. In many ancient cultures, marriage wasn't just about two people falling in love. It was about joining two families, two lineages, two communities. It was a strategic alliance that could bring prosperity and security. And how was this monumental bond sealed? Often with the exchange of gifts, like our shell necklaces. The groom's family might present the bride's family with a necklace made from rare, valuable shells found far from their own shores. This gift demonstrated their wealth, their ability to travel and trade, and their commitment to providing for their new family members. It was a way of saying, "We are strong and capable, and we will honor and protect your daughter." In return, the bride's family might give a necklace that showcased their unique artistic skills, with patterns and designs specific to their own heritage. These gifts side, we have a rich culture and deep roots. We bring our own unique strengths to this union. The exchange wasn't a transaction. It was a conversation. It was a mutual display of respect and a promise of a shared future. These necklaces would be worn during the wedding ceremony and cherished for a lifetime. Physical symbols of the vows that were made. Beyond grand alliances and marriages, these exchanges happened on a more intimate, seasonal level as well. Imagine a group that lived in the mountains and another that lived by the sea. During the summer, the mountain folk might travel down to the coast for a seasonal gathering. They would bring gifts from their home, perhaps sturdy woven baskets or tools carved from mountain wood. The coastal people, in turn, would welcome them with feasts of fresh fish and, of course, gifts from the sea. Shell necklaces would be exchanged as tokens of friendship and hospitality. This wasn't just about trade. It was about reaffirming bonds, sharing knowledge, and celebrating the changing seasons together. When the mountain people returned home, they carried with them not just a necklace, but the warmth of the sun, the sound of the waves, and the memory of shared laughter. These necklaces became a social currency, a currency of emotion. The more intricate the design, the rarer the shells, the more value it held. Not monetary value, but social and emotional value. A person who was a skilled necklace maker was highly respected. A person who was a generous giver was seen as a leader. The act of giving a handmade item creates a unique and powerful emotional tie. When you make something with your own hands, you pour a part of yourself into it. You think about the person who will receive it. You imagine their joy. That energy, that intention, is embedded in the object itself. It's something you can feel. It's a connection that a mass-produced item from a factory can never replicate. A factory-made necklace might be perfectly symmetrical, but it's cold. It has no story. It wasn't made with anyone specific in mind. A handmade shell necklace, with all its perfect imperfections, tells the story of human connection. Each shell was chosen with care, each knot tied with purpose. This tradition, this deep understanding of the power of the handmade gift, hasn't completely disappeared. We still feel it today. Why do we treasure a child's clumsy clay pot or a friend's hand-painted card? Because we understand, on an intuitive level, that these objects are vessels of love and time. They are physical manifestations of a bond. In our fast-paced, digital world, it's easy to lose sight of this. We can send a gift with a few clicks without ever touching it. It's convenient, yes, but does it create the same lasting emotional tie? Does it carry the same weight as something made by hand, with care and intention? Perhaps the lesson from our ancestors and their shell necklaces is to slow down, to recognize that the most valuable gifts are not always the most expensive, but the most personal. The gift of our time, our creativity, and our attention is the most precious thing we can offer. Creating something for someone, whether it's a meal, a piece of art, or even a carefully curated playlist, is an act of love. It's a way of saying, I was thinking of you. You are important to me. And that is a message that, like those ancient shell necklaces, can echo through generations. So the next time you want to show someone you care, maybe skip the online shopping cart. Pick up a paintbrush, a ball of yarn, or just a pen and paper. Create something, no matter how simple. Pour a little bit of yourself into it. You'll be participating in an ancient human tradition, weaving another thread into the beautiful, intricate tapestry of human connection. Thanks so much for joining me on this journey back in time. If you found this interesting, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel for more stories about how our ancestors lived, loved, and connected with one another. What's the most meaningful handmade gift you've ever received? Let me know in the comments below. See you next time. Close your eyes for a moment. Picture yourself on a quiet beach, listening to the waves. Now, imagine that sound. That gentle whisper of the ocean isn't coming from the water, but from the person standing next to you. It's the sound of hundreds of tiny shells strung together, brushing against each other with every small movement. This isn't just a fashion statement, it's a sensory experience, a personal soundtrack that followed our ancestors through their daily lives. We often think of ancient adornments in terms of how they looked, the vibrant colors, the intricate patterns, the way they caught the light. But what if sound was just as crucial? What if the primary purpose of wearing these shell strands wasn't just to be seen, but to be heard? Think about it. In a world without the constant noise of modern life, the senses were tuned differently. Every rustle of leaves, every crackle of a fire, every distant call held meaning. In such a soundscape, the soft, rhythmic rustle of shells would have been a significant presence. It's a sound that's deeply connected to the natural world, reminiscent of the tide pulling pebbles back to sea or the dry rustle of grass in the wind. Wearing these shells was like carrying a piece of that natural symphony with you. Archaeologists have found these shell beads at sites all over the world, from the coasts of Africa to the caves of Europe. They are some of the earliest forms of personal expression we know of. We've discovered nacreous shells, tiny marine snails, pierced and strung together, dating back over 100,000 years. Traditionally, we've interpreted these as jewelry, symbols of status, or markers of group identity, and they were likely all of those things. But focusing only on the visual aspect might be missing half the story. Let's consider the practicalities. To create these beads, our ancestors had to painstakingly collect hundreds, sometimes thousands, of shells of a similar size. Then, they had to carefully pierce each one without shattering it, a task requiring immense patience and skill. Why go to all this trouble? If the goal was purely visual, other materials might have been easier to work with, but no other material would have produced this specific sound. Imagine a group of people moving through a landscape. The soft, collective shushing of their shell ornaments would have created a unique auditory signature. It could have been a way of staying connected in dense forests or during the low light of dawn and dusk, a subtle auditory link between members of a family or a clan. It's a nonverbal form of communication. The sound could announce your presence gently, without the aggression of a shout. It could signal your mood, a quick, agitated rustle versus a slow, calm whisper. It turned the body into a musical instrument, playing the rhythm of life itself. This sound could have also played a vital role in rituals and ceremonies. Picture a shaman or a dancer, their movements accentuated by the cascading sound of shells. The sound would build and fade with their motions, adding a powerful, hypnotic layer to the performance. It would be an auditory spectacle, designed to captivate and transport the audience. The shells weren't just accessories. They were essential components of the ritual, helping to create a sacred and transformative atmosphere. The sound could be used to mark the rhythm for a chant or a dance, unifying the participants in a shared sensory experience. The sound is also deeply personal. It's a constant, subtle companion. Imagine the comfort that gentle, rhythmic sound might bring. A sound that is there when you walk, when you work, when you cradle a child. It's a sound that belongs to you, generated by your own body's movements. It's a constant reminder of your connection to the coast, to the source of these shells, even when you might be far inland. It's like carrying a memory, a piece of home, with you at all times. In some cultures, sound is believed to have protective qualities. The gentle rattling of beads or bells is thought to ward off negative energies or evil spirits. Perhaps this belief has ancient roots. The soft whisper of shells could have been seen as a form of auditory protection, a gentle shield of sound that kept the wearer safe. It's a sound of life, of movement, and in a quiet world, that sound could be a powerful statement of presence and vitality. So, how do we know sound was so important? We can't hear the past, but we can look for clues. Some archaeological finds show wear patterns on the shells that suggest they were strung in a way that allowed them to knock against each other. Experiments by modern researchers who have recreated these shell strands confirm that they produce a distinct, soft, whispering sound when worn. When you hold and move one of these recreated strands, the auditory effect is immediate and undeniable. It's not loud, but it's present. It's a sound that adds a whole new dimension to these ancient objects. By thinking about the sound of these shells, we get a richer, more complete picture of the people who wore them. They weren't just decorating their bodies, they were curating their sensory world. They were composing a personal soundtrack that spoke of their identity, their community, and their connection to the natural environment. It reminds us that our ancestors lived in a world that was just as rich and complex as our own, a world that they experienced not just with their eyes, but with their entire beings. The next time you see a picture of an ancient shell bead, don't just look at it. Try to listen. Imagine the soft, delicate music it made with every breath and every step. In that quiet whisper, you might just hear the distant echo of our shared human story. It's a reminder that beauty isn't always something you see. Sometimes, it's something you hear. Thank you so much for joining me on this journey into the sounds of the past. If you found this fascinating, please give this video a like and subscribe for more explorations into our ancient world. What other senses do you think we overlook when we think about history? Let me know in the comments below. See you next time. Imagine stepping back in time over 13,000 years ago to the world of the Clovis people. What did they wear? It was much more than just animal hides for warmth. Their clothing was a canvas, a storybook of their lives, their journeys, and their skills. Let's start with the basics. The Clovis people were master hunters, and the animals they hunted, like mammoths, bison, and deer, provided the essential materials for their clothing. Hides were meticulously prepared, scraped clean, and softened until they were supple and comfortable. But they didn't stop there. This wasn't just about survival, it was about expression. Think of a Clovis artisan, carefully stitching together a tunic. They wouldn't just use simple sinew. They might add decorative fringes or attach small, polished stones along the seams. They used bone needles, exquisitely crafted and sharp, to sew these garments. Some of these needles, found by archaeologists, are so fine they could have created very detailed work. Color was also incredibly important. The Clovis people used natural pigments, especially red ochre. This iron-rich clay was ground into a fine powder and mixed with animal fat or water to create a vibrant paint. They would paint their bodies and their clothing with this rich, earthy red. Imagine a group of hunters, their leather garments adorned with bold red geometric patterns, lines, zigzags, and dots. These weren't random doodles. Each symbol could have represented something significant: a successful hunt, a family lineage, or a spiritual belief. Red ochre was more than just paint. It was a powerful symbol, possibly connected to life, blood, and the earth itself. Beyond painted hides, they had other ways to secure and decorate their clothing. They fashioned elegant pins from bone and ivory. These weren't just simple fasteners. Some were long and slender, polished to a beautiful sheen. Others might have been carved with intricate notches, or topped with a small, sculpted animal head. A pin wasn't just functional. It was a piece of jewelry, a subtle statement of the wearer's status or the maker's skill. You can picture someone fastening their cloak with a pin carved from a mammoth tusk, a small but significant display of their connection to these magnificent creatures. Now, let's talk about personal adornment, the jewelry of the Ice Age. The Clovis people created stunning necklaces, bracelets, and pendants. The materials they used were all around them, but they were chosen with great care. They would gather unique stones from riverbeds, shells from ancient waterways, and even the teeth and claws of animals they hunted. Each piece told a story. A necklace made of wolf teeth might have belonged to a skilled hunter, a symbol of their courage and prowess. A string of polished, colorful stones might represent a long journey, with each stone collected from a different, significant location along the way. These weren't just pretty objects. They were wearable maps of a person's life. The process of making these items was an art form in itself. Imagine a Clovis artisan sitting by a fire, carefully drilling a tiny hole through a small, flat stone using a sharp flint point. It would have taken immense patience and a steady hand. They would then string these beads onto cords made from plant fibers or animal sinew. The arrangement of the beads, the combination of colors and textures, it was all part of the creative process. Some of the most fascinating finds are beads made from fossilized shells or stones that came from hundreds of miles away. This tells us that the Clovis people had vast social networks. They traded, they traveled, and they exchanged ideas and materials. A necklace found in what is now Montana might contain a shell that originated from the Pacific coast. That single piece of jewelry connects people and places across enormous distances, a silent testament to a world that was far more interconnected than we might imagine. These adornments were also deeply personal. They were likely passed down through generations, accumulating stories and memories with each new wearer. A grandmother might give her grandchild a pendant that her own mother had worn, connecting them to their ancestors and their heritage. In a world without written language, these objects were a vital way of preserving history and identity. They were a physical link to the past, a way of saying, this is who we are. This is where we come from. So, when we think of the Clovis people, let's look beyond the stereotype of primitive cave dwellers. Let's see them as they were. Sophisticated artists and artisans. They decorated their world and themselves with meaning and beauty. Their decorated hides, their ochre-painted garments, their polished bone pins, and their intricate necklaces were more than just clothing and accessories. They were a rich, visual language that spoke of family, community, skill, and the profound human need to create and connect. Every stitch, every carving, and every bead tells a quiet story of their life in the Ice Age. Thanks for watching. If you found this journey into the past fascinating, please like this video and subscribe to our channel for more stories from our ancient world. We'll see you next time. Have you ever wondered what people wore 13,000 years ago? Forget fast fashion. We're talking about the original trendsetters of North America, the Clovis people. And guess what? Their accessories were absolutely stunning. We're not just talking about stone tools here. We're talking about delicate, beautiful shell ornaments that tell a story of artistry, trade, and a surprisingly sophisticated culture. Today, we're going on an archaeological adventure, digging into the real-world evidence of Clovis personal adornment. We'll journey from the dusty plains of Texas to the sun-scorched landscapes of Arizona, uncovering sites where these ancient treasures have been found. How do we know they're that old? And what can these tiny shells tell us about the lives of the people who wore them? Let's start our journey at a place you might not expect. A mammoth kill site. One of the most famous Clovis sites is the Gold site in central Texas. For decades, it was known for its mind-boggling number of stone tools, literally hundreds of thousands of artifacts. But hidden among the spear points and scrapers were other, more personal items. Archaeologists have unearthed incised stones with geometric patterns. And while shell ornaments aren't the primary find here, gold sets the stage. It shows us that the Clovis people had a world beyond just hunting. They had an artistic side, a symbolic world. Now, let's talk shells. To find shell beads, we often have to look at Clovis burial sites, which are incredibly rare. One of the most significant is the Anzic site in Montana. Discovered by accident in 1968, it's the only known Clovis burial. Here, the remains of a young child were covered in red ochre, a pigment used in ceremonies around the world. And alongside the child were over 100 stone and bone tools, including some of the most beautifully crafted Clovis points ever found. These weren't just everyday tools. They were offerings, rich with meaning. While no shell beads were at Anzic, it shows the deep symbolic importance placed on grave goods. It makes us ask, if they buried their dead with tools, what else might they have used to honor them or to wear in life? The direct evidence for shell beads comes from other contexts, often in what are called caches, deliberate deposits of valuable items. Let's travel south to New Mexico and Arizona. In these arid regions, preservation can be incredible. Imagine archaeologists carefully brushing away layers of dirt, expecting another stone flake, but instead, a tiny, gleaming object appears. It's a shell, but it's not just any shell. It is a hole, perfectly drilled, so it could be strung on a cord. So, how do we know these are Clovis? This is where the hard science comes in. The process is called dating. Archaeologists use a method called radiocarbon dating, or carbon-14 dating. Everything that was once alive, like a shell or a piece of wood found with it, absorbs carbon from the atmosphere. When it dies, the carbon-14 isotope starts to decay at a known rate. By measuring how much is left, scientists can calculate its age with remarkable accuracy. So, when a shell bead is found in a layer of soil that also contains charcoal from a Clovis era campfire, and that charcoal is dated to, say, 13,000 years ago, we have a very strong association. This is what we call dating by context. The excavation process itself is incredibly meticulous. Archaeologists don't just dig with shovels. They use dental picks and brushes, mapping the exact location of every single find, down to the millimeter. This is crucial because the context is everything. Is the bead found next to a fireplace? In a pit? Near a cluster of tools? Each detail adds a piece to the puzzle. For example, if several beads are found in a line, it might suggest they were once part of a necklace or sewn onto clothing that has long since decomposed. One of the most fascinating things about these Clovis shell ornaments is where the shells came from. In the heart of the Great Plains, hundreds, if not thousands, of miles from the nearest ocean, archaeologists have found marine shells. For example, shells from the Gulf of Mexico have been found in sites far to the north, and Pacific shells have been found deep inland. This is stunning evidence. It means the Clovis people weren't just isolated bands of hunters wandering a vast, empty landscape. They were connected. They had extensive trade networks or traveled vast distances themselves. A shell bead wasn't just a pretty object. It was a symbol of a long journey, a connection to a distant place. An exotic good. It was, in its own way, a luxury item. Think about what that implies. It suggests social structures, communication between different groups, and an understanding of geography that is far more complex than we often give them credit for. These weren't just trinkets. They were social currency. They could have been used to cement alliances, as gifts in marriage exchanges, or to signify status within a group. A person wearing a necklace of Pacific shells in what is now New Mexico was likely a person of importance, someone well-traveled. However, archaeologists must be incredibly careful with interpretation. It's easy to jump to conclusions, but the scientific process demands caution. We call this interpretive restraint. Just because a bead is found near a body doesn't automatically mean it was a necklace. It could have been in a pouch or part of a headdress. The goal is to build a case based on multiple lines of evidence. For instance, if you find multiple burials where beads are consistently found around the neck area, you can be more confident in calling them necklaces. Another challenge is distinguishing genuine Clovis artifacts from later ones. The layers of the earth can get mixed up over thousands of years, a process called bioturbation, where gophers or tree roots churn the soil. A bead from a more recent culture could get pushed down into a Clovis layer. This is why archaeologists look for intact, undisturbed layers. They want to find what they call in situ artifacts, things that have moved since they were originally deposited. Let's look at a specific example. The Fen cache, believed to have been found on the border of Utah, Idaho, and Wyoming. This cache contained an incredible array of 56 Clovis artifacts, including some of the most exquisite Clovis points known. While the context is debated because it was a private discovery, the craftsmanship speaks volumes. It shows a level of artistry that goes far beyond pure function. If they put this much effort into their tools, it's entirely logical they would apply the same skill to personal adornment. The discovery of shell ornaments completely reshapes our image of the Clovis people. They weren't just surviving. They were living, creating, and expressing themselves. They had a sense of beauty and a sense of identity. They decorated their bodies, just as humans have done throughout history. These tiny shells connect us to them on a deeply human level. We all understand the desire to wear something beautiful, something that has a story. In the end, every tiny, drilled shell is a portal to the past. It is a testament to the meticulous work of archaeologists who spend their lives carefully piecing together the story of humanity. And it's a reminder that the first Americans had a rich and vibrant cultural life, full of art, trade, and symbolism. Their legacy isn't just in stone, but also in the delicate gleam of a 13,000-year-old shell bead. Thanks for joining me on this archaeological dig into the world of Clovis fashion. If you found this fascinating, hit that like button and subscribe for more deep dives into our ancient past. See you next time. Hey everyone, and welcome back to the channel. Today, we're diving deep into the world of archaeology, but with a twist. We're not talking about pyramids or lost cities. We're talking about something much smaller, but just as powerful. Seashells. You might see them as simple beach souvenirs, but to an archaeologist, these are time capsules, tiny maps that can rewrite our understanding of ancient human history. So, how can a simple shell tell such a grand story? It all starts with the basics identification. Just like birds or plants, different species of marine shells live in specific parts of the world. For example, a cowrie shell from the Indian Ocean is visually distinct from a whelk shell found along the Atlantic coast. When archaeologists unearth a shell hundreds or even thousands of miles from its natural habitat, it's a huge red flag. It didn't walk there on its own. Someone had to carry it. This simple act of identification is the first step in mapping ancient pathways of trade, migration, and long-distance communication. Finding a red seashell in a European burial site from the Stone Age immediately tells us that these seemingly disconnected worlds were, in fact, linked. But it gets even more detailed. Archaeologists don't just stop at this. Shell is from the ocean. They want to know asterisk. Which asterisk part of the ocean? This is where the science gets really cool. Think of it like a shell's chemical fingerprint. This is called isotopic analysis. As a shell grows, it incorporates elements from the water around it, like oxygen and strontium. The specific ratios of the isotopes of these elements vary from one body of water to another. The temperature, salinity, and local geology all create a unique chemical signature. So, scientists can take a tiny sample from an ancient shell bead, put it through a machine called a mass spectrometer, and measure these isotope ratios. Then, they compare that signature to a database of signatures from modern shells collected from different coastlines. If the ancient shell's signature matches the signature of shells from, say, a specific bay in modern-day Morocco, we can pinpoint its origin with incredible accuracy. It's like a return to sender address written in the language of chemistry. T's, process, cold, sourcing, allows us to move beyond saying a shell is from the Mediterranean, and instead say it S from the eastern coast of Crete. Let us put this all together with a real-world example that completely changed our view of early humans. For a long time, the story of human cognition and symbolic thought was thought to be a relatively recent European phenomenon, maybe starting around 40,000 years ago. But then, archaeologists in places like Morocco, Algeria, and Israel started finding something fascinating. Tiny, perforated, nacreous shells. These weren't just random shells. They were deliberately pierced, showing signs of wear from being strung together. They were beads, personal ornaments. Some of these beads were dated to be over 100,000 years old. This was a bombshell. It pushed back the timeline for symbolic behavior by tens of thousands of years. But the story didn't end there. Using species identification and isotopic analysis, researchers confirmed these nacreous shells came from the coast, yet they were found at inland sites, sometimes over 100 miles away. This proved that early humans weren't just surviving, they were connecting. They had social networks. They were trading items that had no practical survival value. A shell bead doesn't help you hunt or build a fire. Its value is purely social and symbolic. It represents identity, status, or connection to a group. These tiny shells demonstrate that complex social networks, long-distance exchange, and the use of personal symbols were not just a European invention. They were part of the human story much, much earlier, and across a much wider geography. The desire to adorn ourselves, to communicate who we are through what we wear, is a deeply ancient human trait. And think about what this means. A single shell bead, no bigger than a fingernail, forces us to redraw the map of early human culture. It shows us that 100,000 years ago, people were traveling, maintaining connections, and sharing ideas over vast distances. It also gives us a glimpse into the minds of our ancestors. The choice to carry a shell, to drill a hole in it, to string it and wear it, is a profoundly human act. It's about creating meaning and beauty. It tells us that these early people had a sense of aesthetics and a need for social expression. The shell was more than an object. It was a piece of the ocean, a symbol of a distant place, and a marker of one's place in the world. So the next time you're walking on a beach and pick up a shell, take a moment to think about its potential story. For thousands of years, these beautiful, natural objects have been more than just decorations. They have been currency, symbols, and messengers from the past. They are clues that help us piece together the epic journey of humanity, proving that sometimes the smallest artifacts can tell the biggest stories. Thanks so much for watching. If you found this fascinating, hit that like button and subscribe for more deep dives into the past. Let me know in the comments what other tiny artifacts you think hold big secrets. See you next time. From the windswept plains of Siberia to the sun-drenched coasts of North Africa, we've journeyed through time, tracing the delicate threads of human creativity. We've seen how, for over 40,000 years, our ancestors looked at the world around them and saw not just survival, but beauty. They saw a story waiting to be told in every mammoth tusk, every smooth river stone, and every iridescent shell. This story wasn't just about adornment. It was about connection. It was about identity, community, and a deep, spiritual bond with the natural world. Each bead, each pendant, was a universe of meaning. A spiral carved into ivory wasn't just a pattern. It was the cosmos, the cycle of life, the journey of the sun. A string of fox teeth wasn't just a trophy. It was a token of respect for a clever creature, a symbol of stealth and wisdom to be carried close to the heart. Think about the hands that made these objects. Hands that were perhaps calloused from hunting, stained from gathering berries, or chilled by the unforgiving ice. Yet, these same hands possessed an incredible tenderness and precision. Imagine the patience required to drill a tiny, perfect hole through a fragile bird bone using nothing but a sharp piece of flint. Picture the focus needed to polish a piece of amber until it glowed with an inner fire, a process that could take days, even weeks. This wasn't mass production. Each piece was unique, born from a singular moment of inspiration and effort. The artisan knew the material intimately. They understood its grain, its weight, its song. They felt the way the mammoth tusk yielded to the stone burin, the satisfying scrape as layers were carefully peeled away to reveal the form within. They would have held it up to the light, turning it over and over, feeling its texture, ensuring its balance. It was a conversation between the maker and the material. And who were these artisans? We often imagine them as grizzled old men, wise shamans of the clan, and surely many were. But they were also women, their fingers nimble from weaving nets and sewing hides. They were young apprentices, their eyes wide with wonder, as they learned the ancient secrets from their elders. Artistry wasn't a specialized profession locked away in a guild. It was woven into the fabric of daily life. It was a skill as essential as tracking game or finding edible plants. Let's travel back to a moment 40 millennia ago. The sun has set, casting long shadows from the jagged rocks that shelter a small community. The only light comes from a crackling fire, its flames dancing and painting the cave walls in hues of orange and red. The air is thick with the smell of wood smoke and roasting meat. The sounds are of the night, the distant cry of a predator, the whisper of the wind, the low murmur of conversation. In the circle of warmth, an artisan is putting the final touches on a necklace. 4 weeks, they've worked on it. They collected the shells from a distant shore, a journey that took days. Each one was carefully selected for its size and pearlescent sheen. They bored a hole in each shell, a delicate operation where a single slip could shatter their work. They twisted plant fibers into a strong, supple cord, rubbing it with ochre to give it a rich, earthy red color, the color of lifeblood and vitality. Now, it is finished. The artisan holds it up. In the flickering firelight, the shells shimmer, catching the light like captured stars. The red cord is a vibrant line against their skin. They run their thumb over the smooth, cool surface of the shells. This object is more than just an ornament. It is a piece of their soul. It holds the memory of the long walk to the coast, The sound of the waves, the frustration of a shell breaking, the quiet satisfaction of success. It holds a prayer for protection, a wish for good fortune. And then they turn to someone else in that circle of light. Perhaps it is their child, whose eyes reflect the fire's glow. Perhaps it is their partner, whose smile is a familiar comfort in the vast, wild world. Or maybe it is a respected elder, as a sign of honor. With gentle hands, they place the necklace around the other's neck. There are no grand words, no elaborate ceremony. There is just a shared look, a quiet understanding. A connection is forged, made tangible by this string of shells. In that simply profound gesture, we see the very essence of why we create. We create to communicate what words cannot. We create to say, I see you. You are important to me. You are part of our story. We create to transform the mundane into the magical, to leave a mark that says, I was here. I lived. I loved. I wondered. Across tens of thousands of years, the materials have changed. Tusk and bone have given way to gold and gems, which have in turn been joined by glass, plastic, and pixels. The tools have evolved from sharp stones to laser cutters, but the fundamental impulse remains exactly the same. That moment in the firelight is reenacted every time a parent helps a child string macaroni onto a piece of yarn. It happens every time a teenager braids a friendship bracelet for their best friend. It happens every time a lover painstakingly chooses a ring, hoping it will be a worthy symbol of their bond. The forms of our creativity may be fleeting. A necklace can be lost. A pot can be broken. A civilization can fall to dust. But the spirit behind it is eternal. The love, the care, the desire to connect and to make something beautiful, that is the unbroken thread that links us directly to that artisan. By the fire, it is our most profound and enduring human legacy. When we look at these ancient artifacts in a museum case, let's try to look past the cold glass and the clinical labels. Let's see them for what they truly are. Not just objects, but vessels of human emotion. They are time capsules containing hope, reverence, and affection. They are the whispers of our ancestors, reminding us that even in the harshest of worlds, there has always been a place for beauty. And they are a mirror. They show us that the hands that craft a digital design today are guided by the same creative spark that guided the hands that carved a mammoth figurine 30,000 years ago. The need to express, to share, and to love is the force that has shaped our journey. It is the art of being human. It is a quiet, beautiful song that has been sung across the millennia, and it's a song that we continue to sing today. Thanks for joining me on this journey through time. If you found beauty and meaning in these ancient stories, consider subscribing for more explorations into our shared human past. Be well, and keep creating.